Alright, what's up guys? I haven't made a video in, geez, I don't even know how long. I think my last video was something similar to the video that I'm doing today. But the video that I'm doing today is I'm basically going to be going through how to figure out whether a weapon is good or how to differentiate whether you want to keep a weapon or not, and how we're going to look at the rules for those. So, what's a good example? Um, Basically everything here in my inventory is something good or something that was high power, something I was considering using for whatever reason, and I'll explain how to figure out whether you want to keep an eye out for certain things or not. And eventually, hopefully, you guys will be able to figure out whether or not you want to use a specific weapon or perk consistently in your builds. All right, so going to my other screen here, this is a website called d2foundry.gg. I can put a link in the description below, but this website is what I use to figure out whether I like the different weapon rolls on a specific thing here. So let's go to something called the Call. This is a new sidearm from this season, whatever season this is. Well, I guess it's not a season anymore. We're doing episodes, right? But if it's craftable, you're gonna have this toggle enhanced traits thing here. So that's pretty much the one thing you want to keep out an eye out for. It'll also say craftable here. If it is craftable, it'll say it's damage type and ammo type, and it'll say the location of where to get it. So you can farm for these things if you are looking for something like this specifically. But let's say there's just a weapon that you like. You just like the way that this sidearm feels and you want to see what other perks you can get. So typically with certain archetypes you want to juice a certain stat. So shotguns, it's going to be you want to increase range, you want to increase handling. Sidearms, you typically want to increase range, but these rocket assisted sidearms, you're going to want to increase your velocity as much as possible. And some people say like decreasing your blast radius helps with your damage, just with anything that has splash damage like this in general, since they've changed certain things like that. But you can hover each of these and see, okay, this gets rid of velocity and increases blast radius, so this is not something we want. This gets rid of a little bit of velocity and increases blast radius. So we're basically looking for a barrel that fits our agenda for our weapon. So we have plus 15 velocity. That's pretty good. Gets rid of a little bit of blast radius. I don't mind that at all. This gives a little bit of blast radius. I don't want that. And it gives much less velocity. 10 velocity versus 15 velocity. And then this one is plus 5 velocity. So I would say probably the best barrel for this gun is going to be hard lunch. And then this is kind of preference. Magazines are typically always preference, in my opinion. There's almost never really a time where you're like, yeah, like you have to use this magazine, because sometimes magazines don't really make too much of a difference for your weapon. I would say really you kind of only want to stay away from extended mag unless you're using some kind of build for a weapon that has just a really large magazine. Other than that, I would say stay away from extended mag because it takes away quite a bit of reload. Does get a little bit of airborne effectiveness, but that's not necessary. Also going back here to, I'm going to be a little bit all over the place with some of these things, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop a comment and ask whatever you need to ask. If you have a disagreement on any roles, there's a million different ways to build weapons, and there's not really a one way you have to play Destiny. That's just how any game with any kind of build goes. You can really make any kind of build, even if it's bad. You know, really at the end of the day, it's a game, so don't take things here to heart. This is just a informative video on how to figure out how to craft weapons to your liking, or search for certain roles on roll drop weapons, things like that. Anyways, this gives a little bit of velocity and blast radius. I don't really like blast radius on my sidearms. I would say implosion rounds is pretty good. Got 10 velocity and some reloads, and some stability. That's not bad. High velocity rounds also very good. I would almost say high velocity rounds is better, just because you get that little bit extra reload. You can't ever go wrong with a bunch of reload here. So I would say that's pretty much my preferred. You could go for more reload. You know, alloy mag gives a multiplier. But the nice thing about this website, for the most part, at least for the parks that have been in the game for a while, and they're still updating things and crunching numbers. So some of these don't show a percentage, but other things will say community research scoring weapon hits against 3 separate enemies within 3 seconds of each other, grants 35% damage increase for 11 seconds, which is a very good damage perk compared to things like Rampage. I think I can't remember how much Rampage gives you, but it's really not that much in comparison to this. And you don't have to get a kill to proc one for all. You just need a group of enemies. So during boss DPS, not gonna be really that good. But here's the thing to keep in mind: is the call. You're gonna be sitting here trying to ad clear with this thing probably. Most special weapons, I would say, is something that you would use for either doing damage to like champions or trying to ad clear. You're not really typically using a special damage weapon to DPS a boss. So things like Vorpal, it is a good perk, but I wouldn't say that this is really the type of weapon you'd want to use to damage a boss. And of course, these are the types of things that you would need to keep in mind as you're trying to craft a weapon. Say, okay, am I using this weapon for ad clear? What kind of build am I using it for? Am I doing it with a melee build? If I'm doing it with a melee build, Desperate Measures isn't bad. Am I using a grenade build? If I am, Adrenaline Junkie, Demolitionist, both of these are both grenade perks. So Demolitionist gives you grenade energy back, and Adrenaline Junkie gives you damage for your weapon based on grenade kills, or if you just get kills on the weapon itself. Golden Tricorn would also be good for a grenade build if you were doing that. Hatchling, also good for a grenade build, especially on like a Strand Warlock running Swarmers. But you have a ton of different options here. In this first column, let's go through this first column here and kind of select what I would say is the best. I would say, let me deselect this guy here. Oh, and I have the wrong perk selected here because, yeah, anyways. I would say Lead from Gold is really good. Slice has some application, but the next 5 hits, severing a target, is kind of rough. I would say demo, you know, I would say honestly, Lead from Gold demo, you can make a play with strategist. It's basically like, I would assume it's like demo for your class item or for your class ability. You can also make a play for beacon rounds, stats for all. I would say honestly, every single perk here in this column is pretty good. There's some kind of application that you can use for it, but I would say really it's sometimes it's more about just the last column or the third column. Maybe it's your barrels or the type of weapon, but certain things only work so well in certain situations. Like I explained, One for All, it's really good for ad clear, not good for boss DPS. Desperate Measures, good for ad clear, probably not the best for boss DPS. Adrenaline Junkie, again, ad clear, not boss DPS. Vorpal Weapon, it's nice against mini bosses. Like if you're trying to kill champions with it, I could see a play for Vorpal. I honestly say that Vorpal is probably the weakest perk here out of all these perks in this last column. Sorry if I sound kind of congested. It's I don't know, feel kind of weird. Anyways, but Vorpal is honestly probably the weakest thing in this last column. So you could go with pretty much anything. Everything is situational. Golden Tricorn is only going to work with strand subclasses here. Hatchling can be useful. I would say really only use this if you're like using Swarmers or a grenade build or something. Multi-kill clip, good for ad clear. So you have a lot of good options for ad clear. And I mean, if you are using the sidearm, like I said, you're probably going to be using it for ad clear or killing champions, and that's exactly what this thing is built for. So keeping in mind, that's how this sidearm is going to probably roll. Let's go back to the other weapons here. If it decides to load, I'll just, yep, okay. Let's go on to a different type of weapon altogether. So this is a void lightweight frame assault rifle or auto rifle. This has stocks, which is not common by any means whatsoever, but some weapons have stocks, and typically they're, from what I remember, there's really only stocks on the crucible weapons for comp, but you want to look at the strengths and weaknesses of a weapon. So if you're looking at its base stats, you can see that it doesn't have a whole lot of impact. Its range is fairly low. Its stability is kind of middle ground, handling middle ground. Reload speed's not that bad. I would say anything above 45 reload speed is, I would say, considered decent without looking at any of these things here. Aim assist for an auto rifle, I feel like this is pretty high. I don't imagine that auto rifles really have the highest aim assist. Zoom doesn't really matter as much anymore. All it really does is affect how much screen shake you have if you're compared to your stability, and it's not, there's no like range multiplier like there used to be. Airborne effectiveness, I would never jump around with an assault rifle, but I guess if you're like floating with a warlock, this is something that you would have to keep in mind. Now, looking at its recoil direction, this is a bit more of a whole different thing. So any kind of weapon that you need to fire full auto, or you're going to be firing a lot, just like tap firing, if there's bursts, you're going to definitely feel the recoil direction. Now, semi-auto weapons, you don't really feel recoil direction as much, especially if there's something like a precision frame. They're going to be pretty vertical pretty much regardless. But for recoil direction, if it's a multiple of 5, so if this was 65, if this was 70, 80, any number that is divisible by 5, it's going to be fairly vertical. Now, there's different ways that we can change this. There's a couple stocks that change it, and there's also barrels that'll change it. There's also mods that change it. So you have counterbalance stock. So you could, honestly, what I plan on doing for this thing is running fitted stock and running counterbalance stock. What that does is it gives me a little bit of stability, which is nice, cuts my range a little bit, not a whole lot, but this bumps up my recoil direction to 100, which is max. And they've also added recoil, what is it, deterministic recoil, so that it's basically always going to be a certain way when you're shooting a gun. Kind of like how Counter-Strike is. You shoot a weapon, you can memorize the recoil pattern. They want this to be kind of reminiscent of that. They don't want it to be so random, because then it's like your fights become more RNG versus you knowing your weapons and you know, your experience with it. So the higher you make your recoil, if you make it 100, you're gonna have, in most cases, you're gonna have less deviation with whether your bolts are going left and right. It's pretty much just going to be straight up and down, and the faster firing weapons like 720s like these, you're probably going to have quite a bit of recoil going left and right, even if you do max it out, but that's just because they shoot so fast. If you don't want that, you know, go ahead and use a precision frame. They are typically very accurate, thus the name precision frame. You could go with barrels that'll change your recoil direction. And again, if you go through and hover over these things, you can see what it tells you. It says plus range, plus recoil direction, minus handling, plus stability, plus handling. If there's they're also color coded too. Sorry for anyone who's colorblind. They're red and green, but you can see the different stat increases or decreases for each perk. Now, for this weapon, I would say I just want to juice the range as much as possible. If I was not crafting this is not craftable. It would show over here if it was craftable. You get it from comp. But if I was making this thing and choosing all the perks that I wanted to, I would choose these two perks, Zen Moment and Dynamic Sway, because what that does is it gives you a bunch of different ways to get stability. So this gives flinch resistance now. This is a very, very good perk, and there's a lot that goes into a lot of these different things. And if you want to read into them, you can. But I'm not going to go through every single perk because that's a whole different video in itself. But if you're just looking for a good stability roll, a good range, this is max range. So you can't get any more range than this roll unless you run Killing Wind. I wonder if there's a stock that would increase the range. No. Okay, so this is basically max range, 64 minus Killing Wind. If you had Killing Wind activated, you can activate a perk here, and it'll show how much range you get here. Honestly, Killing Wind might be better than Zen Moment in certain situations, but Zen Moment's just so good. And again, you can activate the perk, deactivate the perk, and see the difference in your stats. You can see on the left side when I activate and deactivate the perk, it goes up and down. Also, if you have the perk activated here, you can hover this and you can see right in the middle of the screen here, it says range, handling, and increased damage fall off distance. So it also will tell you those kinds of stats also, which is really, really nice. But there's just a lot of different things you can look at. You have lethality perks, you have consistency perks, and there's again, a play for a lot of different things here. Perks that you want to stay away from. I mean, Enlightened Action is really not that great inside of PvP. Inside of PvE, it's not bad. But you got to keep in mind, like, am I playing PvP? Am I playing PvE? And certain perks are just better in PvE, and certain perks are just better in PvP. Like, Eye of the Storm, it's a consistency perk primarily used in PvP. You're never really going to be using that in PvE, though. If you are using something like that, I would even say From the Pain is probably just even better than that. But, or sorry, To the Pain, this perk. But yeah, there's about a million different ways to look at a weapon in your builds. If you are looking at a build specifically, let's say you're making a melee build. I love melee builds. Melee builds are pretty nice right now, especially for hunters. But there's a couple different perks you really want to be looking at. So you can sort by traits. These are going to be the perks that are the main weapon perks, like your third and fourth column perks on a weapon. Like, so if we say 1-2 punch, typically, what in the world? My keyboard. Anyways, let me disconnect this really quick and reconnect it, because, yeah, that's crazy. Anyways, we go to traits. We say 1-2 punch. This is a pretty common perk for shotguns, and you can sort by these things. So as soon as you put the trait in, you can scroll down and you can see all of these weapons here roll with 1-2 punch. And some of these are craftable. If you want to get a craftable weapon, so you would type in craftable, and then you would say true. And then you can sort by all these. That cuts it down to 6 results, which is pretty crazy. That I think it went from like 16 to 6. Oh, 36. That's even more. But if you're not looking to have RNG and you just want to craft something, crafting is honestly in my opinion, the best way to get weapons that are in a reliable way. Of course, there are certain things like adept weapons where you can farm for them, and you can put adept mods on them. In some ways, they're better, right? In that regard, because of the adept mods. But and then also there's an increase to all of the stats on the weapon, without having to level it up or anything. But for the most part, I would say craftable weapons is the way to go. So we say craftable true. And let's say we want to use the Wastelander. I love this shotgun. It's just very good feeling shotgun. Now, what you would do is, again, you'd probably want to go to enhance, and you would select 1-2 punch. So you got 1-2 punch here. There's a lot of information on some of these things, and I'm zoomed in a little bit to make it easier for you guys to see. But if you zoom out, you can see that there's a lot of text here. Zoom back in so it's a little bit easier to see. Go to enhanced intrinsic, and for shotguns you would again want to go range or handling. Because this is a PvE shotgun, you can't ever really go wrong with range, just making it so that you can more reliably do damage. Lead from gold's really good. Dual loader is actually pretty good now. There's no reload penalty for it. But lead from gold, dual loader, subsistence, you could make a play for subsistence. That's not bad. Pugilist, final blows with this weapon generate an improved melee energy. Again, if you're making a melee build, Pugilist isn't bad either. You have to think about certain synergies like this. So melee perk on a shotgun. I would say that's pretty good. Lead from gold. This is really, really good in high-end content because in high-end content you have a lot of different situations where you are needing to get ammo back. More reloading is always nice. Subsistence, dual loader, both these are really, really good. But I would say lead from gold, pugilist, are probably the best two options here. You want to increase your range. You could go rifled barrel, it cuts down your handling. You could go small bore, it doesn't really cut down your handling, but this thing handles really, really well already. So like I said, there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. You can also put mods on, quick access sling, backup mag. It's really up to you, but I would say honestly, that's about it. If you want to see me going through a specific weapon or a specific archetype or something and seeing like, hey, I want to see what is a good role for this weapon, I could just drop a comment onto yours and say, hey, this is what I would run on this thing, depending on what you're doing. But again, everything is situational. Another thing to keep in mind is you have origin traits, which these are just nice buffs on top of it. I don't really pay too much attention to these. I really pay more attention to the normal third and fourth column perk combinations with whatever build you're using. Those are really what you're looking at the most. And even more, you can look here and see the damage profiles for some of these things in PvE or in PvP. But I don't want this video to get too long. It's already at like 20 some minutes. Thank you guys for coming by and watching my video. I'm sorry if it's kind of all over the place. I wanted to make it as short and simple as possible, but in reality, there's a million different ways to look at a bunch of different weapons and basically how perks will fit into them and into your build. If you guys want to see me craft my own build, I tend to make builds pretty frequently. So especially with prismatic, everything is kind of up in the air. And I know that a lot of people are really focused on certain things and completely ignoring other things. So if you want to see me make a build for prismatic, just let me know. But yeah, hopefully I can make more videos in the future. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Peace.